I always have these video ideas planned. I don't know how this one will turn out. I tried to mic myself. I know my microphone won't pick up much, but static, and driving in the car. But at this point in my life, I know I'm never going to get the videos done. But now that I'm doing these hour and 20-minute drives with my kid in the hospital, going to work and back, I figured it's time to talk about the Sadducees. I will make a video, I'm sure, once things are settled with my child, Isaiah. We'll be talking about Isaiah, though, because, well, before I get into that, I guess one point I was thinking about, my wife watches this show, which I won't name, but a guy was calling in, and he was talking about the chosen people. Everyone thinks they're the chosen people. And he's like, but the Jews, they have credence to that because they're always like at that aristocrat level. They're the top 1%. They control all the businesses and the media. They don't really sit in political seats of power, but they control those political seats of power. And that's not something new, but that's something they've been working on since about 130 AD. As the Bar Kokhba Rebellion was squashed, they're kicked out of Israel. No one really knows what happens to the Sadducees at this point. There's a lot of different theories, but their mindset exists today. So I wouldn't equate Judaism as a whole to the Sadducean frame of mind, but that high-level power, those aristocrat Jews today, I would. So we have to kind of go back in time. This video will be more on history, and it's going to be a spotty history. It's off the cuff, and there's definitely more I need to delve into, but I'll give you what I know while I drive. It'll be fun. So I mentioned Isaiah, and I think most people knew what they knew about Sadducees. What I knew was coming from a camp song. It's, I don't want to be a Sadducee, no way, because they're so sad, you see. And why are they sad? They don't believe in the resurrection. And it's like, well, why don't they believe in the resurrection? And then you start asking these questions, like, well, what does the resurrection mean to me? What does salvation mean to me? What does redemption mean to me? What did it mean to them? What is the Jewish mindset on these concepts? And you find that they're very different concepts depending on the belief system. So Isaiah kind of echoes a lot of Zechariah. Difference is Isaiah was before the destruction in 586 of Jerusalem and the temple. So in the Sadducean frame of mind, they're thinking, okay, Isaiah predicted this destruction, it happened, and then right after he predicts this destruction, we have what? We have this messianic kingdom, this Messiah has come down, he's got this kingdom set up. Actually, in fact, we probably need to set up the kingdom because Messiah is not going to come back unless there's the kingdom, right? And I watched this one rabbi, he had a series on like debunking Christianity, and then I just started watching him, because actually I liked a lot of what he had to say. And it's not that I'm becoming Jewish, I still believe in Jesus. It was interesting. I like perspective. And one thing he would say a lot, multiple times, different videos, is all Jews just would keep Shabbat. Just the Jews keep Sabbath. Like Mashiach, come immediately. And so they call him Messiah, Mashiach. You gotta throw the slobber in there. And it's interesting because it's like, that's like, oh, that's legalism. You're earning his return. And that kind of fits into this Sadducean frame of mind a little bit. It's kind of a mix of Pharisaical because they have a lot of the oral traditions, but they've also added a lot of other things that almost deny the resurrection. Even this rabbi, not so much believing in resurrection, but believing in reincarnation. And you're like, well, how much difference is it? There's a lot of difference, because it's earning it, right? Because the whole idea with reincarnation is like, you didn't do good. Like, another shot. Something more laid back view of the Christian walk. Like, yeah, you know, I'll live a bad life. Then I'll do a good life. I just want to know what it feels like to be bad. That's not the biblical narrative I remember, but okay. Back to the history. So Isaiah prophesying this future kingdom, right? And what we have gotten throughout time, even some of these historical points, are shadows of what the future will be. Like Hanukkah story, Antiochus Epiphanes, Abomination of Desolation. There's probably going to be a much greater version of that. Like God dislikes to do things in cycles. There's partial fulfillments, and when we read the text, just to know, it's like, okay, that's definitely not fully fulfilled. We saw a glimpse of that. I can see how the Sadducees would see that. Okay, this is the laying of waste. But then again, Zechariah is echoing these same ideas of Israel being flattened like a plain and Mount Zion being set up. And it's like, well, why is Zechariah bothering? Why is he getting these visions post 586? Because there's a greater destruction coming. So a lot of people look at Zechariah like, oh, he's talking about 70 AD. And that's where you get your kind of millennialists today and all that. So that we're living in the millennium. Like, what's wrong with you? Does it feel like the millennium to you? Lights on. So, and I think Boswellians is another name for the Sadducees. Depends on what text you're reading, like Josephus. And your average Jew might not even know who the Sadducees are. Another term for them is the Zaddokim, which I think is really on the nose, right? If you know anything about the priesthood, and we'll get to this, is this line of Zadok. So someone's like, we are the Zaddokim now, you know, we are up the line of Zadok. I don't know if that's what it means, but that's what they're going for. But you can see the deception because they wanted the priesthood, they really do. And after the Hanukkah story, they do take control. But let me not skip too much there. So if you know the biblical narrative, we kind of get to Ezra and Nehemiah, the return of the exiles from Babylon and Persia, and they come back and they're a little lackadaisical. Got Zerubbabel, getting the temple going. And that really takes Nehemiah to bring security. And I'm sure Sadducee would see Nehemiah and Ezra kind of these two witnesses kind of ushering in. And it's not just a revelation idea, these two witnesses. It's kind of been a theme that there are heralds of Messiah's return. Not return, well, I mean, our return as Christians, but that would be the first time he comes, right? We're both waiting for Messiah. It's just one of us thinks he's come already. So even at Passover, they leave out, it's tradition to leave out a cup for Elijah. You know, Elijah is a herald of another Exodus, right? Or being that prophet, like John the Baptist, the immerser, was a herald of Jesus. He proclaimed, made way for the one to come. So Ezra bringing religious reform, Nehemiah bringing Nehemiah build the wall. It's a Burlap and Cashmere song. Gotta listen to Burlap. They're amazing. Building the walls, building the gates. Finally get some structure again. They're getting people to focus not just on their own security, but the importance of the temple system in Jerusalem. And it's building. In the meanwhile, we have Alexander the Great. He comes all the way to Jerusalem, and I believe a priest, this is the story, that a priest came out and showed him, I don't know if it was Daniel or Isaiah, I forget what it was, that predicted the destruction. And he's like, you know what? Not destruction of Jerusalem, but the destruction of Persia. He's like, you know what? We're going to spare you. So they came under Greek rule at that time. And then we had his four generals split the empire. So Israel's kind of stuck between the Ptolemies, which are in Egypt, and the Seleucids, which are holding kind of the old Babylon and Persian, Medo-Persian area, kind of to the northeast. Directions are hard, my brain. So they kind of change control, you know, Israel, Jerusalem being kind of on that trade route, which was why it was so popular and expansive during Solomon's day. It's the silk trade routes. I don't know if that was a Silk Road. I just made that up. That's fleet garbage. I think I just made that up. I have no idea where the silk trade route is. Where does silk come from? India? I don't know. Probably not. Erase, delete. I'm not going to edit this video. I'm too lazy. But, so Antiochus IV, 167 is what we know as the desolation, where he goes in the temple. He pretty much tortures the priests, makes them eat pork. There's different tales. Read Maccabees or Josephus. There's different events that go on. The slaughtering of the pig on the altar might not have taken place at Jerusalem, but then you gotta be wondering, why is a priest sacrificing on any altar outside of Jerusalem? Maybe because the altar at Jerusalem was compromised. I don't know. Because Modin, where this event is said to happen, is outside of Jerusalem. Where we have Matthias. We meet Matthias, who has this one great act, and then he just kind of disappears because then he dies. But he kind of instills this rebellion, incites, what's the word? Fuels this rebellion, right? So Judah and all his brothers, and you read in Maccabees that they all kind of die, you know, fighting, but they do get to rededicate the temple in around 164. So 3 years later, we get our Hanukkah story, right? We already know that there's a feast of dedication before. The question is, were they celebrating this? And this is a reminder to celebrate it. And really, Hanukkah is a second Sukkot. If you read Solomon's account of it, he's celebrating Sukkot. He enjoys the 8 days so much, this big celebration. The recording is when he does Sukkot, he has so much sacrifice, he can't put it on the altar. So fire comes down from heaven and ignites it. Which we have, you know, Elijah, another time that happens. Curious thing is, who else is said to have such power? Antichrist. Antiochus IV is a type of Antichrist, right? This Antichrist figure shows up throughout time. So we get little glimpses of what it'll be like. Because the Antichrist has the power to call fire from heaven, and he fights against those who keep God's law and the testimony of Yeshua, Jesus. So most people think Antiochus is like sitting around in Jerusalem. He was so busy. He's fighting the Ptolemies, then he's in Persia doing something, fighting some other people, trying to expand his empire. So he's a little spread thin. And he's just like, the Jews bolted. Okay, let's send some forces. And in Maccabees, it's like 6 times he like sends armies down there, and they're like numbers like 6 times greater than these Maccabean forces, where, you know, not that well armed, they don't have cavalry, but miraculous victories. So it almost seems like these are Old Testament battles. I mean, it's intertestamental. It's close to Old Testament. But, you know, God is with his people. It feels that way, you know. I don't know if I believe the whole lights of Hanukkah lasting, the oil lasting longer. I don't know if I buy that. But Sukkot is the festival of lights as well. They have big candles they would light so the whole world could see. And we know Hanukkah is just a second Sukkot. So there's already that idea there of this prolonged holiday and this idea of rededication. And it's become a little Christmasized today, but still a good remembrance of God providing for his people and what he does as high priest in the temple now. He rededicates our temples. You know, the earthly temple has fallen, the heavenly temple remains. We all know that the heavenly temple does, but the earthly temple cannot. It's a different order, a different system. And people think it's sacrifice, like it's a horrible thing, it's such a burden. Sacrifice is just a covenant meal with the Father. It's like when you did something wrong to somebody, you apologize, you make it right, like I'm sorry I hit your goat with my cow, hit your goat, stepped on your goat, I'll buy you a new goat, and I'll buy you another goat, and we'll eat the goat together, make sure it's okay, we sit down. So in Isaiah, I think it's chapter 1, it's like, I'm sick of your offerings and your sacrifices, and it's not that you're sick of them, it's just that there was no heart. It's like, sorry about your stupid goat, jerk. Fine, I guess we'll have a covenant meal. If I don't, it'll be like mad and stuff. You know, it's like your heart's not in it. You're like, God doesn't want that garbage. It's like, oh, I have to do a sacrifice. It's such a burden. If you think it's a burden, then it is a burden, and then that's not the point of it. And then you are falling into legalism, because the law is to protect you. Right? It's a fence. It's like guardrails. I'm driving on the road here. It's like, I don't need the law. I'm going to drive on the side of the road. Pedestrians. It's a massacre. Oh, there's curses for not following the laws. You know, it's like, back to the history. I swear we'll get through this. It's a long drive. So after this story, and you know, I wrote a song about how holy kings, the iron rod of the Torah, and then reestablishing, you know, the kingdom of Israel. It's getting to a point of greatness at this point. And when you first read it, I was almost excited, you know, and they're conquering other lands, and it's like they weren't teaching them Torah. They were like doing pretty much what the Greeks were doing. They're like, all right, you don't want to keep Torah, we're going to kill you. They were doing just as much evil as the Greeks were. Greeks were trying to Hellenize the Jews, forcing them not to keep their law, you know, but to follow after Greek things. And part of that is because Antiochus knew this fervor for the Torah would eventually erupt. Like the Romans tried to allow it, and the Jews kept rebelling and rebelling. So it's hard to keep these people subservient to rule, because their law is always going to be contradicted by other laws. And we see it in Babylon and Persia over and over again. And it's likely that Antiochus IV was familiar with these stories, familiar with the Jews, and familiar with what he had to do. He had to Hellenize them. So he gave it his best shot. So the Jews are now doing the opposite thing. So they conquer Idumea, which we know as the kind of remnants of the Edomites. It's a good year Edom was conquered, but we all remember after the destruction of 586, they're kind of mocking them on their road to Babylon, and then I think Babylon actually comes back less than 100 years later and conquers Edom. So they got theirs pretty early on. So what remained of them was kind of south of Judea, called Idumea. And Idumea actually becomes Torah observant, or they die. Right? So now we have Edomites coming back into faith. You know, it's almost Jacob Esau returning. The Galilee is brought back into Jewish hands at this point. We have the Hasmonean kingdom set up. Ask your average Christian what the Hasmonean dynasty is. No one knows, right? But it's a very important intertestamental period where we see the Pharisees and the Sadducees really start to show their faces, and it builds up to what is the religious landscape at the time of Christ. What's so important about these Sadducees? So the second ruler, and I'm sure there's other important rulers, but he's the one that really has been catching my eye as the second king, is Alexander Jannaeus, who helped with a lot of this conquering. And he was a naughty boy. Did a lot of naughty things. One thing that sticks out, actually a couple of things that stick out, is he is high priest. First high priest and king. Now most of you are like, yeah, that's cool. It's awesome, right? Well, A, it's against Jacob's promises and God's law that Levi would hold the priesthood. line of Zadok would hold the high priesthood. He's not. In fact, Alexander Jannaeus was born of a foreigner, I believe, so he wasn't even, was definitely not of the line of Zadok. Should not have held the high priesthood. It's just because he was related to Judah Maccabee that he got in this lineup. So he's getting set up for king as well. No, set up for king. He is king. And we read, like Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, it talks about Melchizedek. What is Melchizedek? It's king of righteousness. It's Jesus. It's talking about Jesus, who is our high priest and king. And here we have the Sadducees, Jannaeus being a Sadducee, trying to fulfill what we were talking about with Isaiah. He's trying to bring about the Messianic age. And you're almost wondering, like, does this man think he is Messiah? And there's a story where it's the Feast of Sukkot again. And there's this water libation ceremony. And there's some indicators in the Torah that, you know, they would put drink offerings on the altar. So this was a thing that the Sadducees believed in. There's a lot of debate on whether or not he's just pouring this out because he just doesn't believe doing the water libation is important. But it seems like there's definitely credence in the Old Testament for this. So that's kind of the debate, is Sadducees are just like Torah literists and they're not keeping these oral traditions. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't hold water. So you take water, you take wine, you pour it on the altar. So Jannaeus decides to pour it down at his feet. And it was just like a little thing, you know, like, oopsie, spilled the water libation. We do this every day, guys. Come on, get over it. It probably wouldn't be that big a deal. Like, yeah, let's come back, get some more water, put it on the altar. But he pours it at his feet. And all the Pharisees there, they got their 4 species. You know, they wave their lulabs. And part of the lulav is the citron. It's a big old lemon. They decide to throw these citrons at him. It's a drive-by fruiting. And if you ever see these lulavs, I mean, like, one good hit could do some damage. I can imagine I would love to see this. I think it's hilarious. But what happens is not hilarious, because he decides to murder 6,000 people because he got hit with some lemons. And they're all mostly Pharisees, right? Those Pharisees actually, I believe, understood the Bible. They understood what the Scripture said. They're kind of what a lot of Christians but came from. Okay? Pharisees were more willing to accept Jesus, believed in the resurrection. They believed that, you know, this type of Messiah could come, like the suffering servant, which is even, you know, Isaiah speaks about, born of a virgin. And Sadducees, they're like, no, we're going to set up our own kingdom and our own Messiah. We're going to hold the priesthood and do whatever we want. So we also have a little war going on, and the Pharisees are like so scared of this man that they actually make an alliance with the Sadducees. So it's not even been 100 years. It's around 100 BC, a little after, like 99, 95. So like 60 some years later, and they're going back to the Seleucid Empire being like, help us against this madman. He's crazy. He thinks he's Messiah. So they're winning. They're fighting against him. And Jannaeus goes and hides. And the Pharisees kind of feel like that. Like, oh no, this is going to be another Greek occupation. So they return to Jannaeus. When the Seleucids back off, they're like, well, you know, these Jews kind of kicked our butts last time, and we have bigger problems. They'll just let them be Jews. So Jannaeus, instead of being grateful, be like, you know what, let's not fight. You guys are jerks with the lemons, and I was an idiot. You know, let's make it. No, he decides to fight them again, kill them, and he takes the remaining rebels, these Pharisees, crucifies them, takes their families, brings them in front of their families while they're on the crosses, and murders them before their eyes. So, what a way to go. Way to, like, try to one-up Antiochus IV. And this is, I feel like this story just isn't told in full. Like, so you're like, all right, here's the Maccabees, yay! All right, let's talk about what became of them, right? Because for sure, Judah, good man, I think he was doing right. You know, when he died the hero, right? Before he let himself become the villain. You know, Janaeus just, and the rest of their line didn't let go of that power. They weren't supposed to have it, right? They fought for good and they just wanted to hold on to it. And that's really where we have the Sadducees, even at the time of Herod. So Herod, where he comes from, builds right up into this. He is, can't remember who he marries, but he marries the Hasmonean. Rome kind of becomes a power. They already had made an alliance with Rome because they were afraid of Greece still. It's a kind of power struggle between Greece and Rome. Makes an alliance with Rome, which comes back to bite them, but forget, Pompey conquers Jerusalem, and Herod gets set up as kind of like a Stuart king, if you will. I'm not sure what the exact term is there, king regent or whatever. No, he wouldn't be a regent. Set up as the lord over the land, under the control of Rome, right? And he really likes, he likes the Sadducees, right? So he wants to keep them in control. So the Sadducees kind of make deals with him, so they're willing to compromise. Your Pharisees not going to compromise. And the Essenes break off at this point. They go hide in Qumran, where we get a lot of the books. A lot of books about the priesthood, about resurrection, that the Sadducees were hiding. But that's a whole other video. Like, what was hidden? We'll do a whole video on Qumran, I think. One of these rides here. That really kind of ties up the history I want to get through. So the Sadducees are the ruling class, and we kind of see that spirit today. And there's still this division in Judaism, where the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And the Sadducees kind of have this Zionism that we see like with Janaeus, where he's conquering and spilling blood, being a naughty boy. And we all just need to get our lemons and throw them. So I'll talk more about their faith in another video, I think, as well, too. And the ideas behind resurrection itself. But just a glimpse of that is, you know, how do we view salvation? How do we view redemption? Salvation, redemption is pretty much what Janaeus is offering. He's like, I'm here, I'm offering salvation. We're setting up this kingdom. Because we think of salvation spiritually. Janaeus is thinking of salvation like physically. Like, I am physically rescuing you from the world and the nations. We're setting up this kingdom. This is salvation, right? I am the Messiah. And Jews, most today, will say like they didn't believe in Jesus because the most obvious answer is, well, he didn't offer salvation. He didn't offer the final redemption. What is the final redemption that the prophets speak of? Is the return to the land, setting up with the kingdom, safety, security. And we have that picture too. Christianity is the New Jerusalem. It's talked all about through all the prophets. It's New Jerusalem, this kingdom, the Mount Zion to come down. God's bringing his own city from heaven down to earth. It's a combination. But we'll know when that happens, right? It's like, are you going to go to another temple when there's one built? The temple I'm waiting for at this point is the one that sits on top of the giant golden city of New Jerusalem. Because I'll know. And Jesus will be ruling and reigning as king. And all the nations will come celebrate the feast. Guess what? There'll be sacrifices again. So you better get comfortable with the idea now, because they're going to happen. Let me merge. Must merge. Really? Come on, guys. Thank you. There's like 4 lanes here. Sadducee. Now, you're sad that you see a little bit more about the Sadducees. And where do they disperse to? We kind of mentioned it at the beginning. So we have 70 AD. After 70 AD, They weren't allowed even in Jerusalem anymore, so they couldn't even pilgrimage for the feast days. And the temple was destroyed. Then we have another rebellion in 130, and that's when we kind of see them kicked out of the land. And that's when we have that point of change, that mindset. It's like the only way to stop these nations is to infiltrate and control. And we see this country after country. And that's why you read old history about the Jews, and they're this pestilence, these vermin, just kind of like come and they set up these businesses. Next thing you know, they own the business, and they're controlling large portions of the economy and the information in the media. So things like the Spanish Inquisition and the Bolshevik Revolution and Hitler's Germany were a lot of these were responses to the Zionism, and unfortunately good Jews get caught in the crossfire. And this is not anti-Semitism, this is just history I'm sharing with you of what the Sadducean mindset was trying to do and build up to. Is sit on these seats of power, controlling politicians at high levels, controlling the media. It's what they do. It's who the Sadducees are, and it's who they're going to continue to be until Messiah returns. That's my theory. Take it or leave it. There's a lot of good Jews out there. There's still good Pharisees out there. There's good Messianic Jews out there. We have a lot of Christians that are just as corrupt as well. So it's not saying, it's not a blanket statement against Jews here. Just to clarify. But hopefully you enjoyed that history. It's, even at the time of Antiochus IV, those Jews who decided to be Hellenized and take Antiochus's offers, and Josephus and Maccabees, they're referred to as Gentiles. And that's even there. That's showing kind of what Paul's talking about with grafting is you can be ungrafted. And being Jewish is not about bloodline. It's being Israel is about covenant with God, walking, keeping His Torah, having emunah, which is trust, faith in God. Not just believing there's a God, but trusting Him fully with your life and everything you do. And if you're allowing yourself to be Hellenized, that's not trusting God. You're like, I believe in God, I believe He's good, but I'm going to do what I want. No, there's no sitting on the fence. We have too many Christians sitting on the fence today. Take care.